I started playing music when I was 7, and my mom, all of my friends were taking ballet lessons, and I wanted ballet lessons. And so one day I woke up and there was a classical guitar in the living room, and I was like, what is this? She goes, are you going to take guitar lessons instead? Which probably, obviously in retrospect, I wasn't going to become a prima ballerina. So, so that's how it started, and I did the basic, how you start, and I did it for 2 years, and then I quit till I was in high school. But I played saxophone starting in junior high and sang in chorus. So I was always doing something in music. And my mom was the person that exposed me to blues, jazz, rock, reggae, classical, everything from the time I was born. Right. And took me to shows, and we had a huge record collection. And she was a piano player but gave it up. She felt that she didn't, at her age, she's almost 90 now. At her age, at her time, there was few women classical pianists that were really making it, so she figured she'd end up teaching music, and she wasn't interested. Right. But I kind of lived her dream in a way, I guess. So, but she took me to see incredible music, so that's how it all started. Well, the first album I ever fell in love with was by Taj Mahal, so I was probably 5. And it was Take a Giant Step, the Old Folks at Home. So it was like modern blues and really old school stuff. So I loved that record. There's something about the spirit of it. Him and he looked amazing to me. And even at a girl's age. And then I love the Beatles. I still do. I love the Monkees then, but I was only 6. So Taj, the Stones, Zeppelin, Beethoven, Dizzy Gillespie. It was a lot. Yeah. Jimmy Cliff, reggae. I heard that when I was 10. Bob Marley. It was a lot. Yeah. I'm still kind of listening to all of those people. Right. Not the Monkees, everybody else. Yeah. No diss to the Monkees, but yeah. So yeah. I mean, this is an old cliche. Blues had a baby, and they named it rock and roll. Blues is the foundational music of American music. I mean, that's our gift to the world through unfortunate circumstances, but everything happens for a reason. Definitely, I mean, the early pioneers of rock were black too. It's black music, and white people latched onto it, and some of them did a great job. And then when I went over to England, it seemed like the English just went with it and flew with it. I mean, even the early Beatles stuff, but I mean the Stones, Zeppelin, Cream, John Mayall, I mean, you can go on and on. Free, and it was so huge. And then in the States, I mean, it had its influence. I mean, Hendrix. So it's a huge influence. I mean, I think it's just, all the rock that I loved was blues-based, right. Yeah. It's funny, as growing up, I always liked the more hardcore music. I wasn't really into girly type music. I guess I always hung out with guys that loved rock. And then I wasn't too into punk. That came along when I was younger, but I was fanatical about music, and a lot of girls weren't. I mean, this is the 70s. And I always felt that I loved sports then, and I I knew I couldn't do it because there was no professional women in sports, and I was good at it then. But I was like, I want to do what I want to do, and music was it. And I'm like, I don't care if there's no, Bonnie Raitt was awesome, but I wanted to be even more hardcore. I mean, it's not that I don't listen to sensitive music, or I love women like Aretha Franklin is my goddess. I love her, and people. I always was more attracted to more aggressive and powerful music, which wasn't typically feminine at that time. But they're like singer-songwriters that love Joni Mitchell, love Carole King. I mean, growing up, and yeah. That is my favorite part of music. I just got out of the studio, and even though I loved it, it's sterile to me still. It's fun, but I'm a live musician. I'm an improviser, and that's, I feel, is my strongest suit, is being a on-the-spot improviser, and I feel like the crowd just pushes you. So I love that. I always loved, that was the first thing that made me fall in love with being on stage, even in junior high band, was playing with other people, other musicians, and playing in front of people. Right. It's the energy, so yeah. It was. I think it's totally changing, and I'm glad. I mean, I'm still like, oh my God, she shreds, you know, and it's still kind of a, was it the word anomaly? Is that the right word? I don't know. It's still not common, but it's becoming more and more so. I mean, you're seeing many more women players that are really, you know, kicking butt. So yeah, it has. We have been put in stereotypical roles, you know, but that's ending for sure. No, when I'm on stage, I'm like, I'm trying to transcend my human body and just be out in the universe. Right. So I think, well, one thing I will say is I always feel like there's a chip on my shoulder, because I see people come in as this older, big white lady, and they look at me and they have their hands full and they're scowling, and I'm like, okay, time to go prove to you what I can do. So every night I have this thing of like, I gotta go out there and kick butt. I gotta show them what I'm about, you know. So maybe that gives me an edge, you know. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any like anecdotes or?
Well, I mean, when I was younger, I was thinner, but still, even then, I was always told how to look, and you should wear this, and you shouldn't do that. You should get a nose job. You should. I mean, it was like a lot of look, especially when late '80s, early '90s. When I had my kids, they were like, "Oh my God, you're pregnant!" Oh no, you know, it was always under scrutiny of how you looked, and some male musicians, because predominantly I deal with men. Were very supportive, and some of them were threatened, and some of them were downright mean. Some of them were sexually harassing me when I was younger. So it was a mixed bag in the industry, because it's so dominated by men. I mean, even now, agents, record companies, clubs, promoters, you're still, you're held to like a different kind of standard. I don't want to go down that road, like victimize, like, oh my God, you know, everything's so about how you look, but it's still there. Right. Women in general, not just in music, but in the world, are held to impossibly high standards and pressure. But I think we're starting to push back. Like, no, we celebrate who we are and what we are, and I'm seeing a shift, and I'm glad. Right. Yeah. I've always been bossy. Yeah. And I mean, I like to be democratic, and I'm not a dictator, but I don't put up with any crap. Right. So, and when I try to be politically, not politically correct, but try to be professional with all aspects, but if someone crosses a line with me, they're going to hear it. And then I'm told I'm crazy or whatever, but I won't let it happen. Totally. Yeah. Very rarely. I have a really high standard as to the type of musicians I like to play with. I like to play with people better than myself. Mm-hmm. Way back in the day, I was in an all-female R&B band, and the bass player was outstanding, but she never really wanted to play that much. She was great. Everybody else was okay. There's a woman sax player in town that she's great. Mm-hmm. I haven't connected with enough women musicians. I played with some, but a lot of them, to me, there was a great woman drummer in Indiana. I tried to get her in my band, but she wasn't. She was also a chef. Mm-hmm. So there's been here and there some women that I'm like, wow, she kicks butt. But a lot of women, to me, unfortunately, that I run into, and maybe I've run into the wrong ones, are kind of weak. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I made one years ago, professional, but it was on like right when people were starting to do that in the record companies. Like, what are we gonna do with this? And I'm like, oh, whatever. So yeah, hindsight's 2020. No, I don't, but I'm planning on with the new record. We're gonna make one. Yeah, because my son he's into hip hop and rap and R&B, and he's a producer / beat maker. Yeah. So he knows a lot of people because they make videos all the time. He's like, Ma, for $250 you can get this great video, and I know it's true because I've seen the work. So we're gonna do it. By the time MTV came around, I was already like in my early 20s, so I didn't grow up watching it. Okay. There was no MTV. To be honest with you, most of the music I listened to was from the 60s and 70s, and when the 80s came around, and drum machines and synthesizers and pop bands and hair bands, I was just not into it. It's when I even went, okay, let's go more into old blues, let's go more into old soul. That's just my opinion. Yeah. And MTV for me was like, it didn't appeal to me. But if I'd grown up with it as a child, I'd have a whole different opinion. Right. But I was already too old. Right. Oh boy, now you really hit that's the one area of life I've never been too successful with. I usually end up with musicians. I just got out of a relationship like 3 years ago. I was with him for 10 years, and we knew each other for 20, and it was a bit of a disaster.
Right.
Yeah. I have 2 children by 2 different guys. They're 11 years apart. One was a musician, one wasn't. I'm not good at relationships. Yeah, no. At this point in my life, I'm like, I'm 57 this year. My kids are grown, and I'm like, I don't think I want a relationship. I think I want to be free, and if I want to have fun, maybe I will. Right now, I have done nothing. I have a dog. So I think the problem is for me, when you're working with men and they're musicians, and especially if they're great, and you're together and you're traveling, it's like, at that time I traveled for 17 years, so how are you going to meet someone? What, a one-night bar thing? So it's like those are the people you're always with, and it can lead to some weird dynamics,
Totally.
People always like to put things in categories. There's just life, black, white, pop, and they divide the music up. So, it's just the way it is, At this point, no. You know what? You feel the sexuality in the music and the passion, and people are like, it's so funny to me because I'll have all these young guys like, oh my God, you're so hot. And I'm like, I look like your mom. But they feel what we're doing. So, I think sensuality, I thought about what makes really great music, and it's like the sensuality of it. I never really thought about that.
Right.
And then not even, you got to own that. I think that is a part of life, and it's definitely a part of music.
Right.
Yeah. Nah. Yeah. It's always been, it's getting a little out of hand. In some ways, it's so explicit. But this is the way we human beings are fascinated and obsessed, so that's never going to change, It's okay.
Yeah.
I don't generally sing things like that.
Yeah.
I've sang sexually. I got, actually, one of my albums, 2 of my albums, I wrote a couple songs that were kind of risque, and the record company didn't want to put it out. And people criticized me, like critics. This is like in the early 90s, like, oh, she's too and I'm like, are you kidding me? Blues used to be, like the early blues were all women, and that's all they sang about. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, why am I? So yeah, it was funny to me.
Yeah.
It seems to be my target audience are men between the ages of 25 and 50. They seem to be my biggest fans. But I'm seeing more and more women and younger women.
Just rock
I think it's the style, but I'm seeing a lot of younger women and some older women, like really empowered and really like, oh, you inspire me so much. I hear that every night, so that's really encouraging to me. Yeah, I've always been to female rebellion. That's my whole life. From day one.
Yeah, and music kind of catalyzed that for you?
I think it was a vehicle for me. I think I always felt like, because I love sports so much, and I used to play football and baseball, and I cried. I remember I was at a baseball game, and I'm like, I'll never be able to do this. I was 10, and I was at the Red Sox game, and I'm like, it's so unfair. So I always felt like, why do guys get to do the fun things? Why do guys get to play in the mud and climb trees and play sports? And so that's all changing too. But at that time when I was growing up, I was like, this is not fair. All the things I like to do, like I didn't want to be in the Girl Scouts. I didn't want to do crafts. I was like, I guess I was a tomboy, but I always liked guys. But anyway, so that was my life. I feel like that's my passion, one of those things, and I'm just gonna pursue it. So music was one of the things I loved,
Right.
I've always had agents.
Yeah.
I've never had a manager. Well, I did kind of have a manager in Europe. For a while. So he was kind of both. He was like the manager and the agent. So I worked in Europe from like 90 to 99 with him, and probably went to Europe like 50 times and made like 3 albums over there.
Yeah. Have they always been male?
Yeah.
Agents and managers?
Well, now I have a female agent, and she's actually the nicest agent I've ever had.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how's your experiences been different with this now new female?
She is much more sympathetic. She's more kind. She's more like a team player with me than a boss.
Yeah.
So I've really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, I traveled from 1988 to 2005 all over the world, and I raised children that way. And then actually a guy I was seeing, because the Mines had fired me because we played a Rick James tune, and the owner of the club was like, "They're never playing here again. This is a straight blues club." I mean, now it's not like that.
Yeah.
I was like, so I never went back. That was like 1990. And I think I played there once for a radio show special, but that was it. And my guy at the time is like, "I'm going to the mines. We're going to get a gig here." I'm like, "They don't want me." And he got us a gig there. And we played as we were co-band leaders. And that was every Tuesday night. And that was in 2005. And they wanted me to get rid of him eventually. And I did. And then they gave me weekends. So that was 3 nights a week in the House of Blues. I played every week. So I had 4 nights a week playing for like the last 12 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, they're very supportive, yeah. They try to get as many women in it. Mostly they're singers, but they try to keep women playing there every week, you know.
Yeah.
My current bandmates, well, when I split up with my guy, who was my drummer for 10 years and then my bass player for like 5, it was pretty sudden. He married someone else and they ended up like in jail. It was really crazy. And which was unexpected. He was never like that. But anyway, I ended up firing him, and I had leaned on him kind of because he was steady. Even after we split up, he was always there. But it was unsatisfying to me musically because he was just not inspiring to me. So the current bass player I have, he has played with like Snoop Dogg and Brian Culbertson and a bunch of other, and like Tyrone Davis when he was a kid. I mean, I've known him forever. He's much younger than me, but his whole family, the Scott family, all of his uncles are really great musicians, and his grandfather had a band that I used to see. So he comes from like a pedigree of really great musicians. So I asked someone, I'm like, "This is a long shot," and I'm like, "Could you do gigs with me?" And I floated him and a couple other guys, but he's been doing them, and it's been the best musical collaboration I've had in years. So I have him. The drummer is actually the nephew of my ex, and then I use a different drummer on Saturday because he can't make Saturdays because he's a church guy and has to play in church. He couldn't handle it anymore. And then the guitar player has been with me off and on for like 30 years. Oh boy, like an incident that would happen? Oh boy, there's a lot. Oh, okay, so I can talk about this now. Okay, so I lost a lot of weight, and the record company I was with was really excited, and I had done a record for them that did pretty well, and the next deal I'd signed was for a lot more money, and I had total control. So and then I got pregnant with my daughter, and kind of was counting on making the record when I had to take time off because I was traveling all the time, counting on the money to get me through, and they said, "We're gonna drop you," and I was like, "What?" "Oh, you're having another kid." I'm like, "Well, so?"
Right.
And I mean, I should have got a lawyer, but so what we ended up happening was they halved the deal money-wise and took away most of my power, but I did it out of necessity to survive with my family, you know.
So you still completed the album?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think to this day, like there's a lot of stories, but that was pretty heavy duty.
Yeah. Are you happy with how the album came out, even with the?
It's okay.
Yeah.
I think the band I had at the time was very faithful to the touring bands I had, and I feel like they didn't bring like what they should have. I think the songwriting was good and my playing was good, but the performance of the band, so I think that didn't really have anything to do with what happened, you know.
Right.
To be a better musician.
Yeah.
I think that's all I mean, when I was younger, when I was like 30, I had about 3 major labels, you know, courting me, and it didn't happen, and I was really obsessed with like, oh, well, by the time I had a kid at 24, I'm like, oh, by the time he's in kindergarten, I'm going to be rich, and I can, you know. So I was really obsessed with that, and it broke my heart, and I almost quit, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to play and do what I do and see where it takes me, you know. So I have no ambitions per se. I just want to become a better player, better singer, and I would like to keep the band I have because they're really inspiring and making it fun, you know. So I play a minimum of 4 nights a week. This week I'll play 6. So it just depends. But the slowest week I'll have is 4 nights.
Yeah. And then what about like in your house practicing and stuff like that?
I don't practice that much because my hands, I play 5 hours, 4 hours a night, and I give myself a break. But I do, if I'm writing or learning something new, I'll pick it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
My biggest advice to female musicians is you have to have a thick skin. You're going to get more crap, I don't want to say the S word, than men, and you're going to be held to a higher, in some ways you're going to be looked at as you have no ability. In other ways, if you're playing, they're going to expect you to be really good, to get respect. You know, that's like anything in any field, that women are not the dominant force. So, but I think the main thing is to have a thick skin and to just persevere, just push through it. And be open. I mean, don't put yourself in a shell where you're like defensive, because you don't want to get that attitude. You want to be open to criticism, open to learning, open to self-criticism, but at the same time have the strength to push through, because you're gonna go through things, you know.